Welcome to the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management Insights by HR.com, your go-to resource for insights into payroll and workforce management. From navigating compliance and technology trends to exploring the latest in global payroll solutions, we're here to keep you ahead of the curve. Join us as we dive into the forces reshaping payroll and share practical strategies to optimize your workforce management. Let's get started. Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of the Future of Payroll and Workforce Management podcast here at HR.com. And my guest today is a very interesting person. His name is Art Morales, and he is a payroll experience expert. Welcome, Art.
Thank you, Brent, for having me on this podcast.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Just for the listeners here, Art has 15 years of experience in payroll, and it's prepared him quite a bit for his role now at a large enterprise size company, helping to lead the payroll experience. And when I saw his title, I had to reach out to him, and he was gracious enough to respond. And here we are. Art, you're based in Mexico, right?
Yes, that's right. I'm located in Guadalajara, Jalisco, Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful. Yeah, there is a restaurant in my town. It's a small chain here in New England where I live in the United States. It's called Mia Jalisco, and I understand that Jalisco region is known for its tequila.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. And mariachi too. Yes.
Oh, yes, absolutely. And you and I, we have something in common here. Folks might not realize it from my last name, Skinner, but I am actually partially Colombian descent. My father grew up in Colombia. His great-grandfather migrated from England to the United States for the gold rush and then moved down south to Colombia where there was word of additional mines. And so you and I, we're both Spanish.
Yes, that gives me some confidence on for this call. But yes, it's good to know that you have like some background.
Yeah, absolutely. I love meeting fellow Spanish people in my travels here. Art, maybe you could share with our audience a little bit about your background and what kind of galvanizes you, gets you excited about payroll.
Yes. So as you said, I have 15 years of experience in payroll. I started in the call center for a company giving support to any payroll queries or questions from the US. And in all these years, have held like different roles. So after being on the CRC, I became like a team leader for the CRC, and then I moved to the payroll operations, and I had a role focused on U.S. taxes. Then I transitioned to a company I worked in a company to transition the activities from the U.S. and Canada to Mexico on pre-payroll input activities and time and attendance. And I also I have been in charge or managed the whole gross to net pay on processing the payroll in-house. And all that experience, that's been like super helpful to do what I am doing right now, because I always have said, Brent, that there's a history behind every paycheck, because we in payroll, we are dealing with money. And I really understand, or I am familiar with the kind of queries that a call center or a tier one is getting. I know the complexity of payroll. And again, all of this has been really helpful for the experience or the activities that I'm doing right now.
Oh, that's excellent. That's a great background. And we're going to talk a little bit about the payroll experience today. Because that is really fascinating to me, and I think it's a type of role or a type of function that's going to permeate more and more organizations as they realize as they come to the realization that payroll is absolutely essential to the employee experience. And maybe we could get to our first question here, which is it could be said that payroll is ground zero in many ways when it comes to the employee experience. What are your thoughts on this idea, Art?
I understand that it can be confusing, particularly for HR professionals, because the employee experience for HR is the entire journey from onboarding to offboarding. And it's the contact with between the employer and the employee, the benefits, etc. And I know that payroll is part of it somehow. However, in payroll, we are doing other things too. From a payroll perspective, it's essential to provide clear instructions on what is required before processing your first paycheck and what steps needs to be taken during the offboarding, such as what actions to complete before they leave the company, what will be compensated on your last paycheck. So for us, the payroll employee experience refers to any interaction that payroll has with the employees, including email communications, presentations, self-service tools, systems, processes, and portals. So Brent, that everyone in a company is being paid to do a job. As the payroll department, our role is to pay the employees accurately and in a timely manner, right? So we also have to make things as easy as possible for them, the employees, including the systems they use, the communications we send, the portals they use, and at the end, the employees, when they interact with the payroll department, Brent, they have an experience. They don't only are having like an experience with a department. They are having an experience with the company they work for. So let me give you an example. Let's say that you have like a SharePoint or a site that the employees use to access to a self-service tool. Is the site or page is really bad, they are gonna say, "Hey, this company sucks." That's an experience that they are having with something that you as payroll are making. The same thing if for some reason the paycheck was not processed on time. That's an experience, right? You are not going to say the payroll department didn't process the paycheck. So you're going to say this company made a mistake. So when an employee contacts payroll, they have to stop doing what they are being paid to do in the company to get a question answer or an issue resolved. So we need to ensure, Brent, that this process, and I mean, when an employee is reaching out or contacting payroll, this process is as smooth and easy as possible for them because it's about their money. They have to pay their rent, and there's a life behind every paycheck.
Yeah.
So besides processing payroll, we need to offer good systems. And I mean, this needs to be easy to use. We need to have some FAQs to reduce the cases or the emails. And obviously, we also need to be as clear as possible in our communications.
Yeah, absolutely. You said something that's really profound there. There's a life behind every payroll. I think that's the way you put it. Folks are, at the end of the day, we talk about all the various reasons that people work, right? They do work that they hopefully like to do, or they have aspirations to do that. There's all sorts of things wrapped up with what people want, what people are thinking and hoping for when they spend a good deal of their life in their work, right? But at the end of the day, the one fundamental, absolutely essential thing for work is being paid. That's what people work for first and foremost. The vast majority of people. And I think you really brought up a lot of great points there, and just kind of underscores this idea that payroll is ground zero for the employee experience. I've seen statistics, data out there from various surveys, a lot of the vendors in this space, and from more than one vendor, they conduct their own surveys, and it's it fluctuates a little bit, but they're all pretty much around the same numbers. There's a good 50% of folks, if you look at some of these studies, like, and you average them out, there's a good 50% of employees that will start looking for a new employer after just one mistake in payroll.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean that just really puts an exclamation point on how critical this is.
Yeah.
You talked about communication
Mhm.
and some of these other things, and you talked about how ma- what I heard is making the payroll process as smooth as possible and also more engaging, is what I'm sort of reading between the lines, is maybe making it a little bit more engaging. That's a great sort of strategy, right? When you wake up in the morning and you turn on the light and the light turns on, you don't call the power company and say, "Hey, thanks for getting my electricity right today."
Uh-huh.
Right? But if the power is not on, if that doesn't happen, then the power company is going to get a deluge of calls from everybody affected right away. So it's kind of in the background, but
Mhm.
it's absolutely just visceral in your face if it goes wrong. And I think it's the same with payroll. Wouldn't you agree?
Yes, totally. Yes. Yes, and also sometimes we can understand like maybe that's why sometimes in certain cases they can be so upset about, right? So they are upset because again, it's money what we're dealing with, or time off, which is part of their compensation, right? So we totally understand like why sometimes these things could happen, and how they could be feeling in certain way. Hmm.
Mhm.
But
Maybe you,
we could have like certain empathy on these cases, right?
yeah, empathy. That's a great term to bring up. There's a lot of empathy that needs to be exercised on the part of employers when it comes to payroll. That I think is where the employee experience piece of it really comes into play, and also trust in the organization. If you trust that organization to take your paycheck seriously, and get it to you on time, that's an implicit um, check mark in favor of your employer as an employee.
Yes,
Yeah,
totally.
absolutely.
Hmm.
Can you share with us some of the just an example of the type of communication that you might send to that any organization might want to incorporate in sending to employees to get them more engaged and involved in the payroll experience?
Yeah, I mean, I could give you an example if you want on something that we did for a country in Europe. Um,
Sure.
so we were getting like a lot of queries from this country, right? So one of the things that we did, if you have like a CRM, you can see like what type of cases you are getting. I mean, which is like the top one topic or the trending topics. So when we did this analysis, we saw that the highest month on queries, it was like a month after summer. Um,
Mm.
so, and most of these cases that we were getting were about team members that they said, "Hey, I missed my cutoff. Please adjust my time card." Right? Things that they have the ability to do in the system, but they forgot to record this in the in the system before the cutoff, right? So what
Right.
we did, and it was like super easy, the solution based on the impact that it had. So for example, what we did is that we knew the problem, right? So they were missing the cutoffs, right?
Mm.
So, and we saw that most of the questions were about adjustments, or they were asking for their time of balances. So right before the summer, we sent out a communication for this country in a local language, obviously, because we have seen also that it's better, even if you have like a global organization, the engagement or response that you're gonna have, it's a lot better if you write communications in the local language, right?
Mm.
If you need a translation, you can put it in there at the bottom, right? But you need to make sure who is going to be the audience of the communication. But going back to this thing that we did is that in this communication we had we covered like the FAQs or the questions that we were getting. Like, this is how you see your balance, this is how you record, and this is how you make adjustments. We set this before the summer, and then after the summer happened, we compared the queries from that month versus the previous year, and we reduced the queries by 30%. Pretty much, we just sent a reminder that, remember, if you're planning to take a summer vacation, record this. This is how you see the system. We made videos also, Brent.
Mm.
And also, when you make videos for the employees, this needs to be super short because no one has time to watch like a video of over 1 minute. So that's important. And we were like super clear and short on the communication on something that maybe you can say, okay, no one needs to read or get like another email because everyone gets like a tons of email every single day. But again, it's only one communication that we sent out, and the impact, it was huge, I would say, because the decrease in the queries, it was like a lot of the numbers.
Yeah, yeah. That's really interesting, and that makes me think of something. You know, it it falls on the responsibility for payroll falls on the organization, the employer, but
Mm-hmm.
but there is engagement that the organization actually needs. It's not just a nice to have to elevate the payroll experience in terms of it just being a more pleasant experience. Sometimes there's communication that you absolutely need from the workforce in order to get payroll right.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and that's where that communication comes in, right? Because a lot of those folks that received that communication, I bet they were they were probably very relieved, or what's the word, pleased to receive that communication, that reminder, so that they were able to go in there and do what they needed to do, so that the organization could process the payroll correctly.
Yes. And obviously, to avoid for them having to, the need for them to open a case to make an adjustment on something that, it shouldn't have happened, right? Just for missing the cutoff, because maybe before they were busy, they didn't remind about the cutoff. So, and again, it's something easy. Also, one thing that I also want to mention about, because I know that I have said on this conversation, Brent,
Mm.
that you need to have like systems and FAQs and all of that. Something that we have noticed is that there are some countries, Brent, that are more inclined to use self-service if you compare other countries. US, Canada, China, Germany, and the UK are some of the countries that if you have something for them, you have like higher chances that they will be using that content because they rather to have like self-service tool or FAQs or whatever you can have on your company to get their question answers in comparison with other countries, right? So
Right.
that's also something that you need to think about when you are going to do something.
Well, you know what? We're getting into global payroll too, which is exponentially more complex
Mm-hmm.
than just one in-country payroll. And one of the factors that organizations need to take into account when they think about how to conduct global payroll is cultural differences, right?
Mm-hmm.
You hear about employer culture and cultural differences, and you might not be, if you just hear those terms, you might not think about payroll first, right? But that payroll is actually directly impacted by these things, which is super interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah,
go ahead.
so there's like certain complexity when you have like a global payroll, as you said, because even though that maybe you could have like questions or similar questions in, let's say, like 5 countries, you really need to see what kind of queries. You need to be like really particular on to see what are the differences, because as you said, like there are cultural differences, and it's based on the experience that we have had on dealing with these countries that we can take like better decisions on what's to do for each country.
Yeah. This might be a good segue, and this might be a little bit of a recap of some of the things you've shared, but it would be helpful for our audience. So, what are some of the things to be aware of as payroll professionals, as payroll professionals strive to weave payroll more prominently into the employee experience? What are some things to bear in mind to make sure that you do?
I would say to get to know your employees better, consider like surveying them and having calls, pay attention to the queries coming into payroll. You have access to more information than you might realize, and understand like these efforts take time, but trust me, they are worth it. I'm going to give you just a quick example on this. So over a year, we'll launch a payroll site with features on FAQs and access to the tools that we own, like time and attendance, where you see your payslip and bank account. So we reviewed the queries to create FAQs to answer like those FAQs based on the cases that could be answered with an article. And then we sent a survey to see what were the expectations they had to have on the payroll site. And then we just had like a few calls, just like a few, to ask them like what were their expectations and how they were looking for payroll content in the company. So all of these things, and I mean the cases, the surveys, and the calls gave us the information to create a really good payroll site. And we didn't only decrease the queries. Also, it would be great if you can have like a search engine system in the company, because we have seen that also people try to look for content on their own. Obviously, as I said, there are countries that are more inclined to use these tools, but I would say review your data and try to anticipate needs. Remember that the employees are not payroll experts. The information you provide should be simple and concise, as clarity is essential for their understanding, Brent, and collaborate with HR, as they are like many interconnected aspects between the two departments, and some topics may have like a thin line, like time off. HR owns the policy, and sometimes payroll owns the system where time off is recorded. And if you have like a team that is a call center or tier one in your company, talk to them, as they are the front line and have like a good vision of what the employees are asking.
Yeah, absolutely. That collaboration with HR, it's huge. There needs to be lots of collaboration between payroll and HR in general. You absolutely nailed it there. And also, just going back to one thing you mentioned earlier, when employees have a very straightforward, smooth way to communicate information to the payroll department that the payroll department needs, you can ward off mistakes later, and B, the payroll department and the entire workforce, or the part of the workforce that's affected, saves time. So there's a productivity gain there, right? Or there's productivity time that's saved, right? Because there's an efficiency to it. So in improving the employee experience with payroll specifically, you're not only elevating the payroll function and achieving engagement between the workforce and the payroll function, but you're also saving the organization on its bottom line.
Exactly.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Art, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for being a guest on the podcast.
Again, thank you for inviting me, and I hope like the people who listen to this really start making some changes to improve the experience that the employees have in interacting with the payroll or HR department.
Absolutely. Wise advice indeed. Thank you, Art.
Thanks for tuning in to the Future of Workforce Management and Payroll Insights by HR.com. We hope today's episode brought you valuable insights and fresh perspectives on the future of payroll and workforce management. Be sure to check out more episodes and explore resources at HR.com/podcast or wherever you listen to podcasts. Until next time, keep innovating and making a difference in the world of payroll and workforce management.